7 Spanish angels took another angel home.
Hey, I'm Willie Nelson, and you're watching Hemp Rock TV on your local public access station.
Thank you so much, Henry. I want to thank everybody who has come out today. If you don't mind just for a second. Today, I'd like to talk about, let me go this way. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we've been going through here in Ohio, if you don't mind for a second. Right now, we have multiple groups that have been trying to pull together and make something happen, make something move for medical cannabis here. And we haven't been able to spread the word as much as we should. And the problem with that, once again, I was saying earlier, was because we don't have enough people coming out to actually support themselves. To support what they do, what their family does, and what we do. Most people sit around and say, what's the point? It's never going to be legalized. And yes, we are right now looking at 17 states that are now legal. Why we're not legal makes absolutely no sense to me. Why Arizona became legal before Ohio became legal makes absolutely no sense to me. Not that I have anything against Arizona, but Arizona has been behind the times very much in the past, and now they are way more progressive than we are here. And we should be part of the freedom trails. The freedom rides that were done in the 60s, they came from a lot of people in Ohio. I just stood in Washington, D.C. in April with people from Ohio who made Washington, D.C. happen. I got to stand in front of the White House and in front of the president's own palace. And that day we invited the president to come out and speak with us, to come sit with us, to learn who we were. And instead, he wanted to go to California so he could do a Facebook interview. I can't even remember the guy's name who created Facebook. Somebody may know. Yeah, Zuckerberg, and that's the polite way that I say it. Zuckerberg is his name. But what the president saw was, it was more important to sit with Mark Zuckerberg in California to do a Facebook town hall meeting than to face the well over 1,000 people that we brought to his home. And it's never an excuse that he didn't have time. He knew 6 months in advance before we were coming. I had Secret Service track down my background because we were going to go to Washington, D.C. and they knew who we were. When we were there, we had at least 5 cops trying to stop us from putting on our event. Today in Columbus, Ohio, we have nobody here trying to stop our event. We are allowed to speak, we are allowed to stand up, we're allowed to come out, and yet people don't want to do it. People say they're scared, people say they don't have enough money, people say they have a birthday party to attend. And you know what? I've had a family that I have lost for 7-year stretches. I have missed family grow because they have ended up in jail over prohibition. I can give up a birthday party. 1 year. Because there will be another one next year, I promise. I have watched people I work with give up honeymoons. I have watched them give up anniversaries. I have watched them miss their own children grow. Because they're going to continue to stand on the front line fighting for you, fighting for me, fighting for us all. And we want to keep on fighting. If we would all stand together, we would have to keep this fight up. Because sooner or later, they would fall to what we want. The will of the people can overcome. Just like they did in Egypt, we can't overcome, we can't stand. Right now, in New York, in many states, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be at one next week sometime. We have the Occupy Columbus going on here. Occupy has so many young people who are standing up right now together, and they're inspiring the older folks now to come out with them and stand together. So now they have in the thousands, they have marked in the thousands of people who are standing in New York right now, little shanty towns. They're camping out, and they don't even have one set agenda. We actually have a set agenda that we have at least 4 different sides fighting against each other against the one agenda that we have. The agenda that we have is to free the tree, to end prohibition, so that we all have a chance to do what we want. It doesn't matter if you're here for medical, if you're here for recreational, just because you want to get high, that is your right as an American to do what you choose, and no one can tell you different. If you want to be able to house, you're using hemp. If you want to paint the house with hemp, and if you want to put materials around the house, all made of hemp. It is your God-given American right. That's what we were told when this land started, and that's what we're fighting for now. So technically, we're real Americans. People at home aren't. The people who stay at home have nothing to say to us because they don't stand at all. People say if you don't get out and vote, then you don't have a voice. If you don't stand, if you don't serve for some reason, then you have no voice. But we'll continue to have a voice. I'm going to take one quick short break, and I'm about to bring someone who I hope to God will inspire you, because for every person who says a reasoning for not getting out to be active, again, whether it's I'm tired, I have to work, I have prior obligations. Right now, after this break, you're going to find out that I have a 75-year-old grandmother, great-grandmother, she's my grandmother, a 75-year-old activist here with us today who's going to be flying back to New York first thing in the morning where she's from because she has a birthday party to throw in her own house. She set up the gifts, the dishes, and everything else before she left New York to come here, but she's here at 75 years old. She won't stop walking. Oh, yeah. So give us a second, and we're going to bring her out. Be right back. Thank you. Please, please. Okay, anyway, thank you once again. We are back here, ladies and gentlemen. In April of this year, I met one of the most wonderful activists of my life that I've ever been acquainted to. Her name is Arlene Williams. She's sitting right here next to me now, and what can I say about this woman here? That I don't even know where to begin right now. I want to tell everything, and some of the things are too dirty to tell, obviously. But I want to tell everything. I can tell right now that this is a woman whose 75 years of blessed living have blessed us now. She has stories that every day inspire me to continue getting up, moving out, and being active in this world. She's not just a cannabis activist. She's also been involved in legalizing gay marriage in New York. The other day, she stood out with the young kids at the, thank you, Occupy Wall Street. And now she's standing with us in Ohio. She's still with us in D.C., and I appreciate her here today. Ganja Granny, to all her friends, Ganja Granny says whatever she wants to say. Thank you, Arlene Williams.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Ganja Granny says hi. Hi. Now, I don't think we can go to jail for that, can we? It's legal. Hi. Okay. I'm really happy to be here. I am not going to go into politics and details like these other speakers because they are more informed and educated and much more articulate and eloquent speakers than I'll ever dream of being. I can only tell you my story and what I've experienced and what I see and what my viewpoint is on the whole case. I grew up in Detroit, and I don't think I ever heard of marijuana till I was about 12. Actually, I'm 5 months older than Prohibition. My birthday's March 4th, and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he signed the Prohibition law August 2nd, 1937. I don't recall anybody ever talking about marijuana. If they did, it was really hush-hush. I was about 12 when I first heard, and there was a movie star, Robert Mitchum. He was arrested. Actually, a cop walked by his house and saw him lighting up through the window, and he got busted and almost destroyed his career. But he made a comeback and he got over it. But I remember it was in all the newspapers. I was probably 11 years old, and I wanted to know what marijuana was. But nobody in my family smoked cigarettes, let alone, and they didn't drink, so I'm not even sure if they even knew themselves, except for what anybody else might have known at that time. When I married, things changed. I was 17, my husband was 32. He was a professional gambler, a sports promoter, and a fight manager. So to keep up with him, I used to try to hang out with him, and I thought it was legal. I didn't know it illegal at the time. Everybody was doing it, at least that subculture. But it was hush-hush. It was my idea, I guess, to buy the first weed because he didn't drink really, and I didn't drink at all, and we barely did it. And it was New Year's, and I said, well, maybe we should do this. And he wasn't too keen about it, but anyway, we did do it. But everything was always done quietly. And you really had to know somebody's great-great-grandmother's third cousin from God knows where in order to get something, and I think it cost about $15 an ounce. And it didn't have a name to it. You just went and bought marijuana. Weed, they called it weed then too. And I think it came in cans, if I can remember correctly. I don't remember baggies or anything like that. It wasn't until I got sick that I really got involved with it. And it was my doctor who, I love telling the story because I went to NYU Medical Center in New York City, and they had given me a 20 to 25% chance to make it to Christmas. It was 1980. I was 43 years old at the time. And the way they did things, it was breast cancer, so they wouldn't know till they actually performed the operation how bad it was, and they took 27 lymph nodes and it was in half of them. So my doctor said there's a government program, but by the time I do the paperwork, you may not be here. He said, you're going to have to reach out, plus this stuff isn't that great. And I love telling this story because I walked out of NYU Medical Center. I stood on the sidewalk and I could have taken the train home. I didn't have a cell phone. People would really have them in. I needed to look at my address book, and I'm sure I would have made a contact. I walked like I knew what I was doing, and I said, God, please help me. And he did. I went to the schoolyard, and I met a young man named Jesus. And Jesus blessed me big time with religion. And we became allies. And I went from 125 pounds to 85 pounds. I started smoking regularly. I went to 175. People were dropping dead around me, wondering, well, what are you doing, you know? And I would tell people, look, try it. I don't know if it'll work for you, but you could try it. I didn't go public, but if you asked me, yeah, I would tell you, and sometimes I would bring it up myself. But what made me want to go public was one morning I picked up the newspaper and I read about this black woman, a year older than me, a great-grandmother, and she had colon cancer. She'd been fighting it for 8 years, and she didn't, her family would get it for her children, her grandchildren, and no one was around, so she decided to go out in the street and get it herself. She immediately was arrested. They handcuffed her, threw her on the ground, put her in a cruiser. She went to the station, she was fingerprinted, mugshot, the whole bit. I read this in the paper and couldn't believe they could do this. At the same time, there was a guy running around. He had mugged 3 women in one day. One woman was an Irish lady going to church, and she was 101. He knocked her down, took her wallet. 2 other black women, one was from Jamaica, and they can't find him. Well, how are they going to find him? How are they going to find anybody? We've got lunatics running around, murderers, robbers, thieves, preying on elderly people, on young people, whatever. How can they do this if they're sending all their resources to some minority neighborhood to arrest some little old lady trying to buy 2 dime bags to relieve her illness? This does not make any sense to me at all. It should be legal. Well, anyway, this woman and I, we started out promoting medical marijuana. And we became, I called her lawyer. I said, look, I want to go to court for her. I'm white. I live on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I have breast cancer. This just wouldn't have happened to me. It wasn't impossible, but highly improbable, because they were directing, most of the police were going into these neighborhoods where there were people of color. Her case was dismissed, and her and I I became the Ganja Grannies, and after we started going around making speeches at the schools and wherever we could, we would talk to people. Eventually, her illness took over, and she died in August '08. Her last words to me were, "It's not the marijuana's fine." It was her last testimony that the marijuana wasn't the problem. The marijuana was what was keeping her alive. Well, after she passed, her family and my family said, "No, you gotta keep going." It has been a trip all the way. I have met really wonderful people. I never dreamed in my life I would be doing this or speaking in public. But I have met really wonderful people in this movement, and I've met a lot of sick people. I'm not talking about people who have a headache or a pimple on their rear end or whatever they're complaining about, but seriously ill. And they need cannabis. It works for them. I don't tell people it's going to cure you. I don't tell people it's going to work for you positively. I don't know that. Like any prescribed medication, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. And it depends, I guess, on the individual and how they receive it, what their system is like. We need to legalize it though, period. Last year in New York City, we spent $75 million, taxpayers' money, on minor marijuana arrests, mostly in areas where there are people of color. They know through research that mostly white people do smoke, and only 15% of them are in prison. Aside from the prejudice aspect of it, kids are losing their aid, their college aid, they get a record or what, maybe not for just smoking a joint, because but still, the police con them into, turning their pockets inside out and exposing what they have, and then once they do that, they're arrested. All of this underhanded, deceptive ways that they're using, all that's got to go. We campaigned in New York, we stood in front of the mayor's house, and we tried our best, and finally now, maybe they're going to back off. I don't know where this movement's going, but 100 years ago, a couple states did put it on the books and make it illegal. It'll be 75 years next year that it is illegal under federal law. It's 40 years this year that Lincoln declared the war on drugs. And where are we? The best we can do is talk about it. We are talking, that is a step, but since it's taken all this time to get to this point, whatever we've been doing, it just is not right. We cannot continue to do what we were doing and expect positive results. We must change our MO. It hasn't worked. I don't know, I don't have the answer. I hope that the younger people can do it. They take me, they drag me out of mothballs here and there, and I'm standing in front of you now, and I'm making this speech, and like I said, I can only tell you my story and what I observed. We need to come together, we need to pull together as one. I don't care how many organizations there are out there. We only have one goal. We must think solidarity. I mean, since 1937, since it became federal law, we've gone through World War II and other wars. They brought the Berlin Wall down. Poland managed in solidarity to kick communism down, bring it down, bring the Iron Curtain down. I mean, last January, we had these kids assemble in Turkey for 18 days of peaceful protest, and they brought their government down. All right, we can't compare our cause with theirs, perhaps, but it's the same thing. Why can't we get together? Why can't we be together as one? We all want the same thing, a legal hit. Ganja Granny's quest for a legal hit, I want it in my lifetime, so we can all smoke together. That's all I can think about. There are so many more important things going on in the world that we should be involved in. But I can't backtrack like I said, at one point I thought it was legal. I don't think that's going to change, whatever the law is. And it only makes criminals out of both sides of the law. The cops wind up wanting their end of it, and we wind up wanting to deal or whatever you think is going to get you over. So, you know, what's the point? Legalize it, treat it like alcohol, like tobacco, the same controls, the same laws. I don't think any kid should be smoking or drinking, smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol or smoking weed. But at some point, if you're old enough to go and serve our country, if you're old enough to vote, well then maybe you should be able to make that decision. So I hope that today, this has been a wonderful crowd. It's been an education for me to talk to everybody because it helps me to stay in this century myself. My mother, who passed away 2 years ago, October 25th, at 2 months past 104. She had all her marbles. She never smoked, she never drank. But at 103, she campaigned in Michigan for medical marijuana because of me. Because she thought it helped me and she thought it would help other people. So I hope that today that we can all come together. With each state, we need to help each other. All through the United States, we need to pull together and try to do it together. Charity begins at home. You start at home. And you don't have to you don't have to move mountains. If you just talk to people every day. Opportunities are presented to you every single day to get the message out there. So if we have to do it state by state, person by person, joint by joint, we're going to do it. And I can only think positive. So I thank you for having me here, and Ganja Granny says, keep it lit, pass it around, and stay blazed. We're gonna win.
Well, Granny.
Thank you. I want to go back and talk to your mom. We were really
She always uses the multiple jokes, and I swear she's more active than I am in a week and 1 day. She is headed back to New York again. Thank you. Tomorrow morning, she'll be back in New York once again. She's gonna go party. And I bet you she parties harder than us too. She has been for the last 2 nights. Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
by myself.
Never mind. Okay, stop that. I'm glad to hear you. I'm not gonna tell you all the dirty things.
Oh, wait a minute. You know, you should introduce this man right here. Come here, Ganja Grandpa.
I would like you to, please.
He was, yeah, I met him. He was in a green Santa Claus suit.
Really?
I was trying. I have the photos on my camera. I'm trying to come on and say a few words.
What was your name, sir?
Doc.
Doc. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I met him in the street at a march. He was riding around. What was that? It was on a scooter. Some kind of was a scooter.
Cruising cooler.
Yeah. Dressed in a green Santa Claus suit. It was May, and I fell in love.
Where was that?
In New York.
In New York.
Yeah.
In May,
Yeah.
2 years ago. Million Man March.
And that's where, and that was New York?
Yeah. He's on the video where I'm telling him all the video. Black dance. It's really funny.
We appreciate you being here today, Doc. Would like to say a few words on that, please?
Well, I found out through the website, Cannabis Village, along with Lynn Wilson, who introduced me to her radio show. As mine. And I found Arlene.
Okay, you're dating.
No, I moved to Cincinnati.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we definitely appreciate you.
That is great. Sorry there wasn't a better turnout.
Oh yeah, there will be. There will be. We always do, Doc. We always do. That's why we have supporters coming out today. I think it's more important to introduce them. Maybe Ohio Lens and fans too. I
appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah.
Coming up here. Thank you so much. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I'm
Go
gonna talk to
ahead.
you later.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and switch to one more local activist.